Well, the Miami Dolphins got their help on the offensive line. A lot of what the fans had been clamoring for came to fruition on Friday night when the Dolphins made a bold move to trade up in the second round of the 2025 NFL draft to secure the services of Arizona offensive lineman Jonah Savaiinaea. And I hope I pronounce his name correctly. And it's going to be a challenge from here on out. Uh, but that doesn't matter. What matters is the Dolphins got some help again for the offensive line. Was it the right move? Did the Dolphins overpay? Let's dive into it. Dolphins entered this 2025 draft with several clear needs: interior defensive line, cornerback, interior offensive line. With Savaiinaea, the Dolphins got a guard, which is what Chris Greer told us right after the move was made when he sat down with Mike McDaniel to talk to the assembled media at the Baptist Health Training Complex. Savaiinaea played everywhere at Arizona except for center. Started as a 3-year starter. And right guard, right tackle, left tackle. Chris Greer made it clear he will play for the Dolphins as a guard. The expectation is that he will be a starter. Ideally, it's a starter from day one, and it better be a starter from day one, considering the price the Dolphins gave up to get him. To recap, the Dolphins gave up to move up from 48 to 37, fifth overall pick in the second round, fifth pick in the second round, I should say. Gave up their picks in the third and fourth rounds, one of their 2 fourth-round picks, pick in the third, obviously the pick in the second. They got pick number 37 as well as a pick in the fifth round for the offensive lineman, who, according to most draft analysts, definitely was a second-round pick. Exactly how high in the second round depends on who you talk to. It's flavor of the month type of deal. The NFL.com draft profile had him as somebody with the potential to develop into a serviceable starter. And if that's going to be a ceiling, that's not good enough for what the Dolphins gave up for him. Again, that is one scout's opinion. Others vary. There are some who suspect he will become a high-end starter at some point, probably not right away. And as Miami Dolphins on SI contributor Greg Crease, who was one of our draft analysts, draft experts, gurus, whatever you want to use, there's a lot of Robert Hunt to him in terms of the stature and the style of play. And Robert Hunt also had a lot of experience. I actually was a full-time tackle at Louisiana Lafayette before the Dolphins drafted him. Did play some games at tackle for the Dolphins, but mostly was a guard, and was a very good one before he left via free agency for the Carolina Panthers. From my vantage point, said before the draft, the Dolphins needed volume, almost to the point of quantity over quality. If, again, there wasn't a big gap in terms of the players that they got. So on the surface, my initial reaction was to kind of wince a little bit at the idea of trading up and surrendering draft capital, especially in the second round, especially for a guy I don't know that anybody was going, Jonah Savaiinaea, how come he's still on the board at 37? Now, obviously, we won't know how good a trade this was, how good a move this was for a couple of years. Not the first time the Dolphins have moved up in the draft to select the players they had targeted. And obviously, when Chris Greer talks about the move to the media after the fact, clearly, if he made the move to give up the draft picks, he's going to say this is a guy we really wanted, that we had targeted. He was the highest rated player on our board. If he wasn't the highest player on the board, why you pick him then? So obviously, that's something that all GMs are going to say at that particular time. Kind of what we heard. I haven't gone back and checked for the exact same transcript from 2021, the last time the Dolphins made a move up in the draft with strictly draft picks. And that move, as we all know, didn't work out so well. That was when the Dolphins moved from 50 to 42 in the second round by giving the New York Giants a third-round pick the following year, and the Dolphins selected Liam Eichenberg, who on the plus side has started 52 games for the Dolphins. On the plus side, has shown great versatility in being able to play multiple positions. On the negative side, has not been necessarily a great NFL player so far. Good enough that the Dolphins re-signed him, but the idea based on the contract was it was re-signed as a valuable backup with a lot of starting experience and position flexibility. And one would think that with the drafting of Savaiinaea, Eichenberg will be a backup in 2025 and no longer will be a starter, which I know is going to make a lot of Dolphin fans happy. And now we're looking at a projected starting offensive line of Patrick Paul, James Daniels, Aaron Brewer, Jonah Savaiinaea, and Austin Jackson. How good of a line that can become, obviously, time will tell. Don't know that on paper it's anything that's going to overly concern opposing defensive coordinators, but again, it's a big part of it also is how well they mesh. And we do have to mention it. If the Dolphins can avoid injuries along the offensive line that were such an issue the past couple of years, that also would be good. The big question mark in terms of playing style, Savaiinaea is a physical dude with some mobility who can get on the second level, good scheme fit for the outside zone, as Mike McDaniel mentioned. And he also pointed out that he likes the fact that this is a guy who can set a physical tone. This is something that's been lacking from the offensive line. If he can become that physical presence up front with the ability to get to the second level on those outside zone runs, then the Dolphins will have hit and nobody will care what they gave up to get him. And that's always the case in a trade up. And I did a retrospective of all the trade ups the Dolphins have made in the 2000s on Miami Dolphins on SI.com that I encourage everyone to check out. And no, the scorecard on those trade ups is not nearly as bad as I think most Dolphin fans would imagine, primarily because the last memory of one of those moves was Liam Eichenberg. Let's also point out the Dolphins got Xavier Howard in 2016 after moving up from 42 to 38 in a deal with the Baltimore Ravens. And that one, I would say, worked out pretty well. And there were several others throughout the 2000s that have worked out very well. And this one better work out very well because right now the Dolphins, as we head into day 3 of this 2025 NFL draft, find themselves no better at cornerback than they were heading into the draft, which means to say it's still a 4-alarm situation we're dealing with, especially with the Jalen Ramsey situation, which has not changed. If anything, maybe got worse over the weekend with that Instagram post of Jalen Ramsey's on his account with 1.5 million followers, I might add, of a rotten orange next to another rotting orange, and basically suggesting that you need to not associate yourself with rotten things. And the term that he used was, if you want to settle for mediocrity, surround yourself with people who are happy with that. Suggestion being that maybe he thinks the standard in Miami is not set high enough. And Chris Greer was asked a couple of times, one time both Thursday night and Friday night, situations involving Jalen Ramsey, primarily in terms of the timing of a potential trade. Asked Friday night whether there's a possibility of reconciliation with Jalen Ramsey so he can remain on the roster in 2025. And Chris Greer basically punted on the question, basically said, focused on the draft and the players who were here. So take that for what it's worth. Certainly sounds like it's an irrevocable situation we're dealing with, that Jalen Ramsey indeed will be out the door. And if that's the fact, right now we're looking at Cam Smith, Storm Duck, Ethan Bonner, Artie Burns, Ryan Cooper Jr., Isaiah Johnson, Jason Mitri, along with Kader Kohu, who is pretty much a slot guy. Sure, the Dolphins can take a cornerback on day 3, but you start looking at 4th-round picks and below for a starting cornerback, gets a little dicey. Sure, Dolphins hit with Kader Kohu as an undrafted free agent, become a serviceable starter, and I like him as a nickel corner. You could point to Nick Needham, who is going to his 7th year in the NFL now with the Cleveland Browns. But those are not frontline players. And ideally, you'd like to have at least one frontline starting cornerback. There are free agents on the market who will be available for for the Dolphins to reevaluate and perhaps chase after the draft. Rasul Douglas is one who jumps out. Stephon Gilmore, Asante Samuel Jr., if his medicals check out, because there's some concern about a shoulder issue. Those are three guys who stand out as possibilities for the Dolphins, but clearly they need to do something. Possibility exists that Jalen Ramsey could be traded on Saturday. Don't think it's likely at all because, again, the cap hit is pretty egregious for the Dolphins. His salary cap number, which currently is 16.7, jumps up to over $25 million with him no longer on the roster. If you trade him before June 1, if you trade him after June 1, that salary cap number goes to, I think it's $6 million for 2025, which obviously is a lot more palatable for the Dolphins. And obviously they're not getting a high draft pick anymore because we've already gone through 3 rounds. So today is about trying to find those gems. Dolphins have had success. The 5th round actually has been a really good round for the Dolphins, more so than the 4th. If you go back to Devon Gottschall, obviously we can mention Zach Thomas, Brian Cox, Rashad Jones. Those are all 5th round picks. The Dolphins absolutely nailed. Be nice if they could get one of those, especially since now they have 3 5th round picks after the trade with the Las Vegas Raiders. They have 1 pick in the 4th round, which is the 116th overall, which means it's the 14th pick of the 4th round, 3 in the 5th, none in the 6th, 3 more in the 7th. Wouldn't be surprised to see if we saw more shuffling up and down the draft board, either to pick up more picks, perhaps, or to move up for a higher pick than what they have. Like if they gave up 3 7s for a 6 or a 5 or something, would not necessarily surprise me. But again, the big news as we talk today is that move for Jonah Savaiinaea. It's a move. The Dolphins did not exactly play it safe, and it's the same thing with Kenneth Grant at 13th in the 1st round. This is a guy with very, very high upside who perhaps may not have been a slam dunk at 13th, certainly among a lot of the draft analysts who had him pegged for later in the 1st round, but there's a high ceiling there. And with Jonah, this is a guy who hopefully helps you get closer to what you want to have as an offensive line. So we'll see what the draft holds for day 3. That's a very quick thoughts on day 2. And that'll do it for now.